Yes,
Hello.
sir.
I knew you were going to do that as well. Hello, my name is Matthias, and welcome to the FPL Scope podcast. This is how we're starting this time. Kevin was being annoying and interrupting the intro of this video, but either way, this is the Game Week 12.5 edition of FPL Scope podcast, I guess, because we are in the middle of an international break, which we both love so much, both me and Kevin. I think Norway are actually now completely out of being even available to qualify for the Europa League, Jesus Christ. The Euros. Europa League is on my mind because I'm a West Ham fan, but I think Norway are now also like completely out of the realm of possibilities of being in the Euros, so we joined Sweden in not being part of the festivities this summer, and Kevin and I are not going to be part of the festivities either, it seems like, because we both got our tickets unsuccessfully, or we applied for tickets and we were both unsuccessful in getting tickets, both of us and all of our big friend group. But either way, international break, no tickets aside. How are you feeling, Kevin? And how are you feeling about the final international break for this season before we go into the hectic December schedule for FPL?
Yeah, I couldn't care less, even though I'm actually attending an England game on Friday. So it feels sort of like a stupid feeling to have, considering the fact that I'm actually attending a game. But I couldn't care less. I just want to go back to the club football, and yeah, I mean it's maybe sounds very bitter for me as a Swedish, you know, citizen, and us being out of the Euros and etc. But at the end of the day, I've never liked the international break. I've only liked it when there's actual stakes and everything like that, and when it's just a bunch of friendlies and no one cares, and people come back injured from the international break, and club flow is completely fucked. It's just irritating, to be completely honest. So the quicker it's gone and the quicker we're back into it, the happier I am.
Yep. Well, what was not irritating for us this past game week was Kostas Tsimicast, who has been like the main talking point in FPL the last few game weeks, it seems like, because he joined Liverpool as the starter after Robertson got injured. It seemed like he was going to be a fantastic pick in FPL because, defender for Liverpool with good fixtures, who's attacking and gets assists quite often. And then he started 2 games, got 2 clean sheets, looked like he was fantastic. Then I brought him in personally last game week, and I don't know if you brought him in that game week. You brought him in the game week before, right? Didn't you get a clean
Yeah,
sheet first?
something.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I also brought him in last week because Dan Burn got injured.
Okay, so we both brought him in last week, and then he just failed completely. He didn't even start, was it?
Yeah.
Joe Gomez started instead, and it seemed like his place was going to be kind of in jeopardy. I was really close to selling him myself. I was really close to just getting rid of him because I couldn't really trust him starting. But then luckily for us, Joe Gomez was slightly injured, as he often is, to be fair. Tsimicast got the start. We don't know if Tsimicast would have started if Joe Gomez was fit and healthy either, but either way, Tsimicast got the start and he got 2 assists, got a clean sheet, 15 glorious points for us in FPL. Both me, you, and Kimo, all 3 founding members of the FPL Scope podcast, have gotten a huge haul from Tsimicast, and we've all gotten pretty good game weeks so far for this from this as well. So yeah, let's just go into your team, to be honest, and check out your score, which is 91 points. Really, really good game week for you. On top of the Tsimicast points, 15 points from him. You got 9 points from Adingra, who's providing the goods, even though Palmer did outscore him once again. But to be honest, they're both good picks, so it doesn't really matter that much. Other than that, Salah captaincy, of course, was fantastic. Holland captaincy would have netted you the same points. He got 16 points as well. Your vice captain was actually Mitoma, who got 1 point, but that's because he didn't start his game. They play Sheffield United at home, which seems like a good game, but we've now seen both with Saka and Mitoma that you can't really trust that game either. And it seems like a kind of game where people tend to rest their best players as well. So yeah, I'm going to be wary of that in the future because it seems like people are taking Sheffield United lightly, and maybe they shouldn't do nowadays because Sheffield United have gotten like 5 points, I think, in the last 4 games or something. At least they beat Wolverhampton, and then they drew now against Brighton as well. So, yeah, either way. Pretty good game week for you in general. You benched Alvarez with 5 points, but at the same time, you had most of your attacking players either matching him or outscoring him. So, how do you feel about the game week in general, and how do you feel about the start of the season so far? Because it's game week 12. We're about the third of the way through the season. So, how do you feel about the start of the season so far for you in general?
It's not been the best. I think there's been a lot of weird decisions. I think a lot of players have also disappointed that and also haven't performed when I brought them in and etc. So I think it's just a mixture of impatience and these sort of things. But yeah, I think just teams in general have had sort of a lot of inconsistency. Manchester United is one of those teams. A lot of us went with, Onana and a midfielder, or even doubled up with Bruno and Rashford hasn't scored in forever. So it says a lot about the season as well. I think I've done the stupid no Son or Madison route, which has worked in certain aspects of the game because I had Trippier, which worked very well during the weeks I had him. Same with Dan Burn and all these type of stuff. Not to say that Son and Madison didn't outscore them, but I think in terms of the plus minus is quite close. So I think it's just a lot of people have had different strategies this year that have either cost them or done extremely well. Like for example, there was a period where no Holland worked and was a viable option, but the minute he scored in the Champions League, I remember telling you we have to keep him. We have to keep him because he's just going to start exploding. And now every week he's basically just going ham from the looks of it, except the one freak ass week where they win 6-1. Then he gets he
Subbed
gets
off.
injured, subbed off, and literally Alvarez, who we all have, did nothing either. So that is for me the sort of saving grace slash sort of sums up like fantasy Premier League right now that it is very luck based. It's always been very luck based. So, I mean, Tsimicast even getting 15 points
Yeah,
is very lucky.
yeah,
So sometimes you just have the luck, sometimes you don't. But I think right now, after 91 points and etc., I feel like things will change, and I'm pretty happy with a lot of aspects of my team, but I just want to make some small adjustments. And I think one of those things, which we'll definitely be talking about in the fixture ticker, is Newcastle assets, what we want to do with that.
yeah, for sure. I think your team is actually pretty well set up. I like the fact that you have three good strikers because I think forwards are going to be the way to go going forward. There's just a lot of good players that we'll talk about in the fixture ticker as well. You have Holland, Watkins, and Alvarez. I think those three guys are really good. Holland obviously is a mainstay. He's going to stay in the team for the rest of the season, as we know. Watkins has been a troll for you pretty much the whole entire time you've had him in FPL, but finally he's actually scored 6 points from him. It's just better than usual, at least for you.
Yeah.
Alvarez has sort of been like trotting along like not too well. Like he's done like all right the last few game weeks, but it's not really been like fantastic either. I think Alvarez is just a really tough player to really deal with because especially for me who has a lot of value tied into him, I don't really want to sell him in one aspect, but in the other aspect, there's so many other good strikers that I really want and I kind of prefer over Alvarez. So for me, it's really tough what to do with Alvarez going forward. So what are your thoughts with Alvarez in general in the next few
I'll
game weeks?
be
They also
I'll be
blanking in the gate
completely
team, as we know.
exactly. So for me personally, um, I'm looking at getting rid of him because Holland is very much a foreign player and he's going to be dictating a lot of the play and they're going to be looking for him more and etc., especially now that he's in red hot form. And I think for me it's just having, I've told you, like, I don't like doubling up too much on teams in the same position. That even goes with Matoma and Adingra as well. I didn't like that I did it, but it was the matches that dictated it. With City, the matches don't dictate that anymore because they're going into a pretty difficult period. So for me, I think there are options elsewhere that are cheaper and have better matches in total and etc. and gives me more freedom to sort of look into what I want to get in. For example, am I going to get in Eddie Nketiah because he's, you know, he looks like if he's not injured, he's going to be their starting striker for some time.
I think Jesus is back in training now. Last
Well,
thing I saw.
never mind what I said about him. Alexander Isak, for example, is one because we know for sure Wilson's out forever. But the
Yeah.
question is, when is Isak back? That's another thing.
Yeah.
Um, but regardless, it's also gives me more freedom to look into what strikers I can get in. We can definitely when once we get to the fixture ticker, there's a lot of different options of strikers that we can look into. Darwin is one that I've been looking into because I think he's looking really good. Really unlucky not to get more than assist, I think, in the Brentford game. Two goals completely offside, fair enough, but he's looking good. He looks like he's got the confidence back, and everything besides the Premier League, he's usually scoring in every game. So Darwin is definitely on my watch list for sure.
Yeah, definitely. International break comes into play there as well because he's going to play in South America.
Yep.
So I think next game week, especially facing Liverpool at Anfield, I think that's probably not the game week to bring him in. But for game week 14 onwards, I think game week 14 is actually pretty good like swing of fixtures in terms of yeah, a lot of players that we look at later on with the fixture ticker. But yeah, I also really like Darwin. I like yeah, if Gabriel Jesus is back, I like him. He was like a really popular pick before the season, before I got injured.
Of
A
course.
lot of people were doubling up on him and Saka, and then they had to sell him because he was injured right before the season. And speaking of injuries, we also have one of our favorites, Christopher Nkunku, who's going to be back after international break as well. Chelsea are looking amazing now, scoring 4 goals against Man City. So with Nkunku there as a striker potentially as well, potentially on penalties, potentially on free kicks, he might be the next big thing in FPL as well. So I know you're really interested in getting him as well. So I really get why you would sell Alvarez to get one of these guys in, and Watkins as well for that matter. Like Aston Villa's fixtures are getting worse as well. So I think you have some decent options there when it comes to the forwards where you can change them around. And your midfield is doing all right as well. Like you do have some issues potentially, with, like you said, with Gordon's fixtures and the double up on Brighton, but they don't have the worst fixtures, Brighton at least still. So yeah, it's not too bad. But yeah, I quite like your team, and I also like your transfer as well. Burn to Gabriel. I think Gabriel was the standout pick in defense, even though he didn't get any points. Really should have, because once again Arsenal basically conceded no chances, and once again they scored from set pieces. And when you hear those two things, you expect, oh, Gabriel is going to have a haul because he is their best attacking threat on set pieces, and he's also probably not going to concede. But once again, he blanked. So I think Gabriel on the opposite side of the spectrum to Tsimicast has sort of just been unlucky lately. So I think that's going to turn around. He's going to be one of the must-own players to have in FPL going forward. So I really do like your transfer as well. Getting away from Byrne, who's injured, obviously, for a struggling Newcastle defense now that they got so many injuries and tough fixtures. So yeah, I really like your team, and I think you're pretty well set up for the future. Speaking of a team that is pretty well set up for the future, let's go to Kimo, who is currently top amongst the FPL Scope crew because he has gotten 97 points from game week 12. He's had a pretty good year after, like in total. And he also has 11 points from the guy who has the same jersey or kit as you, Everton, the Core. But it should be noted, Kimo at least claimed last week. Now he claims that it was a smart purchase of Doucouré, but last week he claimed that he was actually going to get Jeremy Doku from Man City for game week 11. Obviously, Doku had 26 points or something. I don't know, something like high 20s in terms of points, or mid 20s, I guess, last game week. And Kimo claimed that he wanted Doku, but this game week was sort of reversed. Doucouré got 11 points. Looked really good for Everton and got some more nice points for Kimo, who also has Tsimicast, even though he didn't have a backup defender because both Lamptey and Byrne are injured. So kind of interesting to see Kimo go with 0 transfers and sticking with Tsimicast, even though he didn't have a backup at all. I guess Tsimicast would have played even if he was benched from the start, but still. Good game week from Kimo. He has a slightly different team from you. He has 2 forwards. He does have Mubama, who's worth 4.3. Doesn't get playing time ever for David Moyes and doesn't want to sign a new contract now, which I think is really stupid from Moyes, especially seeing as West Ham strikers have been struggling, Antonio in particular. Yeah, Kimo with 97 points, of course. Are you jealous of the team, or do you think your team is better equipped for the next few game weeks compared to this?
It's all right. Like, obviously, very jealous of Son. love seeing Diaby, who I much prefer over Watkins, anyways. And of course, he's got the big dukes, as we love to call him. So of course, I'm very jealous of Decore, but that's pretty much it. I think in terms of a solid team, definitely, but those injuries are the things that he'll need to fix, and hopefully he will. And I'm sure we'll have some fun suggestions to fix those players. But in terms of whether he also moves away from Alvarez will be the question, because I think he can definitely do some fun changes, maybe even bring Nico Jackson back, the biggest troll of his life. Who is scoring? Like I
7 league goals. He's
listen,
on
man.
that.
I said I don't know what I predicted in a review, but
Can
I
look that up.
definitely think what was the lowest that I kept. I definitely think 7 was the lowest I must have kept.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's scoring. He's not particularly. I mean, he's been decently impressive the last few game weeks at least.
Yeah,
But yeah,
he got a
he
hat
is
trick
he is an
against
option.
Spurs.
He did get a hat trick against Spurs against 9 men Spurs with the high line with Højbjerg and Eric
I
Dyer.
don't understand why he's getting so much hate. So if he
Yeah,
didn't score a hat trick, is he a fucking loser then?
no,
Like
of course
what?
not.
So like, I, he still got a hat trick at the end of the day. It's not his fault that uh mate wanted to play suicide football in the sense of having what is it, 9 men doing a high line. So
Yeah,
what is he meant to do? Not score in those situations? Silva's got a fourth goal as well. So
yeah,
um yeah, for me, I think too, like I get cloning on Chelsea fans that got too gassed from the game, but at the same time, why are Spurs fans even talking when they lost so badly and
yeah.
then screwed up again? So for me, clown on Nicholas Jackson all you want. The guy has, what is it, 6 goals in 11 games? Something like that.
Yeah, 7 goals in the league in total.
Then that would be 7 and 12. Okay, yeah.
I think
That's
so.
not
Yeah. You projected your projections for Nick Jackson was between 10 and 16 goals, so it's looking pretty good. I think that's achievable, like in between those
yeah.
two numbers. So yeah, credit to you. You
Yeah.
also had Nkunku doing 12 and 20, which he can still do, to be fair, but he has also missed 12 games so far, which we did not expect. So, but
No,
yeah,
of course not.
but that's also the question for me because we saw in preseason both Nkunku and Nick Jackson linking up perfectly. Like they looked super good together. But that was before they got Cole Palmer, who's now like a vital cog in this team as well. Sterling has been revitalized, has had a fantastic season, was amazing against Man City as well,
Yeah.
making Pep sort of regret both him and Cole Palmer potentially as well, selling both of those guys. Gallagher has been amazing this season, to be honest. Who they also have Romeo Laue coming back. Caicedo is obviously the main man, and so who's going to get dropped when Nkunku comes back? That's my question to you. Like, do you think they're going to rotate quite a bit, or who do you see like dropping out mostly for this team? Because would it be Jackson?
It might be Jackson, but at the end of the day, I think it becomes a question of how they do the formation. Because if they do the formation of a 4-2-3-1 instead, then everyone gets to play, right? Because then it'll be Sterling to the left. It'll probably be Palmer to the right, and then Nkunku at the cam and or CF, and then they'll have Jackson at the top, and then have most likely Enzo and Caicedo at
Gallagher
the
drops
DM
out.
spots. I personally think Gallagher will be the one who gets dropped out.
Okay.
If that's what they want to do in terms of like a 4-2-3-1. But if they want to go more like a 4-3-3, or basically that it's either Gallagher or Jackson that gets dropped in my eyes. I don't think Gallagher's been masterclassing it as people are making it out, like to the point where he's getting an England call up. Did he get the England call up over Ward Prowse?
I mean, Ward-Prowse is not in the squad at least, but I don't know about Gallagher. I think he is in the squad
Gallagher
actually.
got. I'm pretty sure Gallagher and Palmer
Palmer
made the
Palmer
England team.
Palmer made it,
And I'm pretty sure in the
and
same
Sterling is still
video,
out, which is crazy.
that's what I'm saying. So I don't believe Gallagher's had a better season than Ward-Prowse, and I also think Ward-Prowse is better than Gallagher, just full stop. So yeah, I am not on the Gallagher hype trade, but maybe Pochettino has to be because he, for
Seems like he
whatever
loves
reason,
him.
appointed him captain and all this type of bullshit over
Yeah.
Sterling and some more viable options. But here we are, man. I don't even think Gallagher's even come close to his Crystal Palace form yet, and that's several years ago at this point now. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it'll either be Gallagher or Jackson. It's most likely Jackson because Pochettino has been obviously the harshest towards Jackson.
Yeah.
Because even after the hat trick, he was bitching about him, sort of like what Lucha did with Mbappe in the weekend. So yeah, I think those are the two options. We got a little bit sidetracked there, but it's always fun
Yeah,
to talk
but
football.
Chelsea is a hot topic in terms of FPL at the moment because they have had really difficult fixtures. But as we'll see when it comes to the fixture ticker, they have produced some really good numbers in these big games. It's just a matter, can they translate that to easy games at home, which they haven't so far this season against Brentford and Nottingham Forest, where they've created a lot of chances, to be fair, but they haven't really scored and haven't gotten the points yet. So yeah, Chelsea is sort of like the hot topic, and I think that's going to be like the team to target at least in the next like 2-3 game weeks when they actually get some really good fixtures from game week 16 onwards. So yeah, I think Chelsea is definitely something to talk about. But Kimo has no Chelsea players in his team, but he does have now 2 free transfers to play around with because he did no transfers this past game week. 97 points this time around. I think he has 681 points or whatever, 781 points. Can't remember exactly what, but he's like 15, 16 points ahead of me. I think he's like top 30k in the world just about now. Kimo's also a really good season for him so far. But like you said, the injured players, his bench, he has no playing players on the bench. He only has 11 players that play currently, especially going into the international break. That's not ideal. So maybe potentially downgrading Alvarez to someone like Alvanini, for example, who I really like, and getting an upgrade, or selling just Burn. Burn has some value in him as well. So yeah, definitely I think he could look into getting Gabriel as well and jump on that bandwagon after. He should have had points against Chemo, but Chemo's been sort of lucky with that, at least last few game weeks. But in general, really good team for Chemo, really good squad, and it looks like a good season for him as well, which is good for him, I guess. Next up, we're going to have a manager who had even more points this game week, and that is our manager of the week. And if you want to be a manager of the week, you guys watching right now, you can join our mini league, the FPL Scope mini league, which is league code V9JT0D. And if you become the highest point earner, point scorer in a particular game week, you'll be featured on the podcast, just like Tony Scully has. And Tony Scully got 103 points, member of the 100 club. I think I am. Are you this season? Have you had a 100 plus score so far this season?
I
Were you
came close
close at least?
several times, but I don't think
You came
I
close
actually
this
did.
round at least, but didn't we have like another game where we both had pretty high scores? I feel like we have had that, but let's double check while we are at it. Game week history. No, you had 86 and you had 86 and you had 91. So high 80s and mid 90s you've had.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I've had one game week where I had 100 points. No, I haven't. My days. My life has been a lie. 89 points, 91 points, 86, 89 are my best game weeks. But either way, this guy at least is in the 100 points club with 103 points. Salah, obviously, captaincy pick, 32 points, really good for that. Tsimicast, like we said, fantastic haul from him. Liverpool players in general have helped a lot of us this past game week. And then the final key contributor is Leandro Trossard, who this manager actually brought in for this particular game week as well, selling Madison, who's now long-term injured, for Trossard. And that worked out beautifully from the get-go. Trossard against Burnley, 13 points, goal and an assist. Really nice goal as well, by the way. He just sacrificed everything to make sure that the ball went into the goal, crashed into the post, and was still able to play on and get an assist in the second half as well. On top of that, he has Bowen, who I have really high hopes for going forward. He also sort of became a bit unlucky when it comes to Pedro Porro, because Pedro Porro was going to get 12 points, I think, when they went into injury time in that Spurs Wolves game, and then they conceded twice. Pedro Porro dropped down from bonus points, conceded twice, which is -1 as well, and didn't get the clean sheet, obviously. So could have been an even higher score in general. This is also sort of like a weak bench with only one playing player, and that is Tarkovsky, who's a decent player in his own right, I guess, playing for Everton, who are one of the form teams in the Premier League at the moment. But in general, pretty good team, pretty template standard team, I guess, as well. Gordon, who you have and you might have to get rid of. Maybe that's someone this guy should get rid of as well. Watkins, same as you as well. Kind of similar team to yours, to be honest, with Gordon and Watkins there, and Tsimicast. But just a couple of key differences with Trossard and Bowen, for example, which gives him the 100 points. Wildcard in game week 7, Tony Scully did, so doesn't have the wildcard chip left. But other than that, I think the team looks pretty good. What are your key concerns with this team and things that you like about this team in general, you think?
I mean, he has a bunch of players who don't play on the bench as well, which is a bit of a concern, like you said, going into an international break. But other than that, I think it's a very different team. It's not a lot of people that I expected to bring in Trossard, especially considering the fact that, yes, he was going to play this week, but who knows how his playing time will be, especially with Gabriel Jesus back in training. So,
Yeah.
uh-oh. So we'll have to wait and see with that transfer. But the rest, I think, looks good. I think I've sort of glad that I didn't go with Aston Villa defenders because they just keep randomly conceding
Yeah.
one bullshit goal every game. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't go with Cash. So maybe I'd still say stick with it because I think Villa have what, one more easy game
Yeah,
coming
Spurs
up.
away and Bournemouth away in the next two.
Oh, well then, food for thought, Cash,
Yeah.
maybe, but definitely Gordon. And yeah, if there is an informed striker to get in, then that's also something that you can do by shifting both Cash and Watkins out. But other than that, I think the team looks good. Son, I think, could hilariously become a differential if people just completely mass sell him as well. So he's got options definitely in terms of rotating players out and bringing people in. And yeah, well done on the century and 3 points, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
on the topic of Son and Spurs in general, they lost now against Wolverhampton and a deserved loss as well because Wolves were just a better team in general in that game, even though
yeah,
they left it
sure.
late to win it with Pablo Sarabia finally getting a chance and proving his worth. What do you make of Spurs going forward as well with all the injuries they have? Madison's out long term, Van de Ven is out for a while, Richarlison is out for a little while as well. What do you make of Spurs going forward now? 2 straight losses. Do you think they'll get back on the saddle and become a good team again? Do you think Son is like a nailed option still? Pedro Porro as well, defensively, they haven't really been the best either. But Pedro Porro has been really impressive going forward. He had the assist, obviously. There's a siren going outside. I don't know if you can hear it, but either way.
Yeah.
Pedro Porro has also, I don't know, I just sold Pedro Porro last week for Tsimicast, and obviously I'm not regretting that now after the 15 points from Tsimicast. But at the same time, I think Porro just looks really good in general. Even with a poor defense, he could still score. Kind of the same thing as with Cash. Like, I'm sort of like hesitant to sell Cash as well because I feel like he's going to score any minute now. He's sort of like the spiritual successor of Purvis Stepinian, who's someone that could score a goal but just hasn't in the
Yeah.
last few weeks, and could keep a clean sheet but just hasn't in the last few weeks. But yeah, back to Spurs. What do you make of their assets going forward with all the injuries and stuff and their turn of like bad form, I guess, the last 2 game weeks?
I mean, I think it's a bit excessive to say that it's a sinking ship and etc. But they are massive injuries. Madison, which is their most creative outlet, and Van de Ven, who I told you when they signed him was going to be the reason why Christian Romero is actually going to be a good defender in the Prem this year. So, which is a bit questionable considering his record, but Romero and Van de Ven is one of the best partnerships in the Prem. So it's a huge, huge blow, but I don't think it means the end for Spurs, and I think people shouldn't get too deterred. And if anything, the long question of who's going to be Spurs penalty taker is 100% on now
Yeah,
because what are the options? It's just him or Kulusevski or Brennan Johnson, who is 100% not going to be taking the pen.
Yeah,
So I think in terms of talisman and all this type of stuff, it becomes a question of that. Now they're even more reliant on Son to do stuff. So I think we're going to see him getting the ball more and all this type of stuff. And we know what Son can do. He can shoot outside the box. He can do everything. So I think with Son particularly, don't panic. I do think that Pedro Porro is gonna concede more simply because they don't have as good of central defender pairing because
yeah,
Romero is very reliant on having Van de Ven. Like it's so
yeah.
obvious, and vice versa. To be fair, not to undercut
Romero.
Romero, but it's just these are two massive injuries, and I've always said it harkens back to a joke that I once said to a Manchester United fan and a good friend of ours, Remy, when Van Persie was playing there, and I said, "You guys are a Van P injury away from your whole season derailing," and that's exactly what happened. So this is a call for concern, but considering the fact that it's not very long term, that by I think what isn't it in both cases by January it should be okay.
I think so. I think Van de Ven and Madison will be like mid-January, just about, when they'll be back.
And not to say that Spurs will actually give Ange some money in January to sign some decent backups as well. And
Yeah,
if the signings are anything to be considered, they've done amazing signings so far. So I trust Ange to course correct, but it will be difficult without Richarlison, without Madison, and of course Van de Ven.
yeah. You did mention Brendan Johnson though, and he's sort of been like a bit part player so far this season. But I think he's looked really good the last few game weeks and
Yep.
had the goal. Didn't he score the goal? Yeah, Pedro
Yeah,
Porro
he
the assist
scored.
and Brendan Johnson with the goal as well. So he's actually a decent option as well. I think he's like 5.7 or something like that, mid sort of price. You also have Bentancur, who's been injured the start of the season. He's now back. He was a really good player for them last season as well. He could
Yep.
potentially be a good pick and be like the Madison sort of role type of player as well. So I think they have some nice like differential options now. Kulusevski might actually take more of like a goal and assist type of role now as well. Now that
Yep.
he's like one of the main men. So yeah, like you, I think Spurs are going to turn it around. I think it's just, especially the first game after all the injuries, it's going to be tough to just readjust because you need a couple games to figure out how to work out a team again because Madison was so integral to everything they did offensively. And like you said, Van de Ven was so integral to everything they did defensively. So I think they're just going to need some time. And at the same time, they've only played Wolves. And I think Wolves have just been really good in general against the bigger teams. Even stretching back to last season, I think at home against at the Molineux for Wolves, they've been really good. That's how they stayed up last season. And that's also how they've been really impressive this season. I think Wolves are also an underrated team that you could potentially talk about as well with their fixtures. So I wouldn't panic with Spurs either. I think Pedro Porro is fine. I think he's going to concede most games because they do have really tough fixtures. But I think Son is also like a decent hold for now. I think, like you said, he is going to be the penalty taker. Pretty much 100% sure about that. And yeah, he is the main man, and he can score from anywhere and score regardless of who's his teammates as well. So yeah, I'm not panicking about Son personally as an owner myself, but if I was in your position, I probably wouldn't buy him either. I think he's one of those players where you just like, if you have him, keep him. If you don't have him, you can probably look away from him a couple game weeks at least until they figure it out and until they get better fixtures. So yeah, I think this Son is a decent hold, but yeah, in general, this team, I really like it. I'm really jealous of them having Jared Bowen because he is probably my main target now, seeing as they have Burnley away in a game week where there's not that many good captaincy options. So I think Bowen captaincy in week 13, I've talked about that for the last few weeks, and I think that's the way I'm leaning towards as well. So I'm pretty jealous about that. Trossard, like I said, not 100% sure about his playing time in the future, especially if Jesus is back. But at the same time, Martinelli hasn't been that impressive this season. And they do lack a lot of creativity without Ødegaard the last few game weeks as well. So I think Trossard is someone who definitely should get more playing time in general in the Premier League. He's such a good player. I really wish he played for a team where he played more, sort of like Fabio Vieira as well. I think Arsenal have a lot of good players that are sort of not being used as much as they should be used. So yeah, I like the team in general, and good game week for this manager who I think has the exact same points as me actually in FPL. So pretty good position to be in. But yeah, like you said, the bench needs fixing, and then potentially Trossard and Gordon. I think. Other than that, I think you can hold Cash. I think you can hold Poro because I think both of them can get attacking returns. Like we saw with Tsimicast just now, being patient is something that works out at some points as well. So yeah. Let's move on to our predictions from this past week when it comes to the games. And we were just talking about Spurs against Wolverhampton, and we both predicted incorrectly here, but you were pretty close because you had a draw 2-2 between Spurs and Wolves. I had a Spurs win 2-1. I thought it was going to be a tough game, but I thought Spurs were actually going to pull it off still. But Wolves, I think, were deserved the winners in the end. They played really well. And I think also Bellegarde, the attacking midfielder that they brought in from the French league from Strasbourg, he looks really, really good. I think Wolves in general just have so many players that are really impressive on the eye at least, but then they can't really create the chances and the goals necessary to win most matches. But I think they have a lot of interesting players, even without Pedro Neto out. So really fun game in general, I feel like. But yeah, any comments in general about any of these fixtures? What stood out to you this past game week? Any surprising results? Anything where you were sort of on the money? Obviously, you have one correct scoreline. We both had Aston against Fulham. But what was the most surprising thing about this game week, you think?
I think the most surprising thing is it's always going to be me picking Brighton to win at home when they keep fucking it up. So that's really irritating. Uh, just in terms of an FPL standpoint for me, who doubled up with Adingra, who did score to be fair, but Mitoma being absolute shambles these last couple of weeks, and obviously the big one being Newcastle absolutely getting pumped by Bournemouth. They are very unlucky that they didn't get Sheffield United at Bournemouth, basically, because if Bournemouth put away more of their chances, it could have easily ended 5-6-0. Seriously, they were running rampant. It was very amusing and crazy to see. Spurs a little bit annoyed that I didn't get the draw because it looked like it was going to be a draw, considering how late the equalizing goal came.
What a goal by Sarabia, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Goal of the season contender for
Massive.
me.
But he's been quality. He was so good
Yeah.
at on loan at Sporting. He was really good at PSG. He's been good everywhere he's played. Essentially, I don't understand why Wolves are like, oh, whatever. He's just some random guy. Like, no, he's gonna be the next guy you sell for like 40 million for no reason. So just go for it. Just keep giving him minutes, and I'll 100% like out of all those guys. I mean, obviously Pedro Neto is Pedro Neto, but I would I would highly consider Sarabia if he's playing every game week because that's just how highly I rate him. But other than that, I think everything else felt pretty on the money except Chelsea, City. I'm usually the one out of the two of us who's more on Chelsea's side with these sort of things. So I'm a bit annoyed that I didn't predict the draw because Chelsea do well against the bigger sides and has done, to be fair. I mean, they drew Liverpool, they drew Arsenal, they drew City, and they beat Spurs. So
Yeah.
yeah, next time I'm gonna back them with either a draw or a win. Not gonna give them the L, even though they'll probably lose. But here we go. Other than that, everything else seems pretty good. Liverpool Brentford. You expected a more tighter game, and I expected a blowout, and I guess it ended up being a bit of a blowout. Yeah, I expected a narrow win for West Ham, but it ended up being a very fun narrow win, right? It was
Yeah,
three
really
two
fun
in the
game.
end.
Back and forth game where West Ham were like switching between having the lead, losing the lead. They were up 1-0, I think, and then they were down 2-1, and then they beat them 3-2 in the
But
end, which
that's
was really fun to
yeah, I
see.
mean that's when Awoni and Alanga are back together again. They're such a formidable duo. Seriously, they
Yeah,
just
and
look
White as
so
well.
good together. Yeah, they look really good together. So uh, yeah, I think it was kind of a fun game week in the sense that obviously it reflected with a lot of high scores and stuff like that. But just generally speaking, it was a fun week. Obviously for me, Everton winning as well in a pretty fun game, which was also 3-2, I think.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it was.
so yeah, so uh, fun game week all around. Man United are fucking garbage. That's all I have to say,
They
I
still
guess.
they still managed to
Yeah,
get 3 points
they
in
won,
their
but
sixth place.
they should have. Like, I don't understand how they're scraping these wins rather than comfortably winning. Like, if you're Manchester United, you shouldn't be barely beating Luton Town at Old Trafford.
That's true, but they are getting the points at least, so they are actually in a pretty good
Yeah, yeah,
position,
yeah.
despite having a
So
terrible season so far in terms of
Ten Hag
play.
out, but Ten Hag in because he's still doing the business at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But speaking of Man United, we know that they are actually like the form team of the league. I think they won 4 out of the last 5 games or so. But that is about to come to an end, I think, because if you look at the fixture ticker, they are at the very bottom because they have some really tough fixtures, starting with Everton away, which is, to be honest, one of the easiest fixtures when it comes to the next 5, I guess. But Newcastle away is always tough. Chelsea seems like a really tough fixture in general now. And then Liverpool away in Game Week 17 as well. They do have Bournemouth at home in Game Week 16, but Bournemouth in their own right, like we said, against Newcastle, really surprising. They are starting to turn it around with Iraola as manager, which is nice to see for us La Liga fans. But yeah, I think Man United are in some pretty big trouble going forward. So yeah, I think it's definitely a time to get rid of some Man United assets, and especially Højlund, who I had in a couple of my like free hit drafts. I've had faith in Højlund, and he's had the chances to score, but he's just been missing them left and right. And
yeah,
people have been clowning on Nicholas Jackson, but now Højlund has actually missed way more big chances in terms of how many goals he scored compared to them in the league at least. He's up for some scrutiny as well because he has still, I think, 0 goals and 0 assists in the Premier League so far. He has been really good in the Champions League and he's looked really good in general. Been sort of unlucky a couple times, I think.
yeah,
But he is someone, especially with all the forward options that I like currently. I think he's someone, if you have him still, or yeah, already, he is someone you should probably look into selling. Because I think he might be injured as well. I think he's injured for the Denmark games as well. So Man United, I would stay clear of them, even though they have a lot of points. They are not fully fit in terms of being a good team. Bruno Fernandes has had sort of disappointing season. Rashford has probably been the biggest disappointment of them all this season for me. I had a lot of faith in Rashford after the last season and thought he had like sort of turned a corner now and he's back to being like just a world-class player in general. But I guess people were right that he was sort of more just like a purple patch last season and hasn't really provided the goods this season. But yeah, let's not talk about Man United. They are bottom of the barrel when it comes to their fixture ticker. Let's look higher. We have West Ham. We've talked about Bowen, but are there any other West Ham potential players that you are looking into, or is it just Bowen or bust basically for you?
it's either Bowen or actually three players that I'm looking at if I'm considering anything. I brought in the Brazilian megastar that is Lucas Paqueta in draft, and that worked out perfectly because he scored a cheeky little goal. Obviously, you know me. I love me some James Ward-Prowse, even though he fucks Everton every chance he gets, except for this year. So get in. I think Ward-Prowse is an excellent choice as well. You know, takes set pieces, gets assists, get is unlucky not to score more. But of course, when it comes to direct goals, it's Bowen that you go for. He's more costly as well, but he gets the goals, and there's a reason why he costs as much as he does, and has clearly found a form that made him a household name in the first place, and why Liverpool will be signing him as a Mo Salah replacement. Sorry, but yeah, it's one of those three. I think Paqueta feels more of the outside pick out of the three.
Yeah.
I think Ward Prowse is the good budget choice, and I think Bowen is the superstar. So might as well go with him. And yeah, I was about to ask, who's your penalty taker in the end? Is it still Bowen?
No, it's either almost Avancini, but he's out obviously. It's either Benrahma or Paqueta. I think it's
So it
Paqueta
is
mostly.
Paqueta.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. All
mostly.
right, fair enough.
I think if they're both on
Um,
the pitch, I think it's still Benrahma.
yeah, I have Areola, so I'm gonna keep sticking with the tits.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say like obviously Zuma and all these guys are good, but I think the priority is getting one of their awesome midfielders than it is getting their defenders. If you already have Areola, great. But I don't think getting their defense is the priority out of the things that you can get from West Ham.
Yeah. Yeah, I think defensively you could still stay away from them, even though the fixtures aren't too bad, I guess, in terms of
Yeah.
not conceding. Burnley away could be a clean sheet. Palace, it's sort of a tougher game now because they have SA and Elise back, so I think we're going to concede there. Palace usually score against us. It's usually like a pretty fun game, West Ham against Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that. Spurs away, Derby, that's usually conceding goals as well. Fulham away, that's actually decent in terms of clean sheet potential points. So yeah, I probably wouldn't go with a West Ham defender, even though I'm a pretty big fan of Zuma in terms of FPL, but I've also been a big fan of Gabriel this whole season, and he hasn't really paid it back to me in terms of set piece goals either. I think set piece goals are kind of more random than those offensive players that we have, like Cash, Estepinian, even Trippier, who takes set pieces and stuff. I think that's more important for a defender than having set piece threat in general. It's just really tempting to go with those players that you know are going to be a threat on every set piece, especially with West Ham with Ward-Prowse delivering the goods like he did against Nottingham Forest twice. So yeah, I think also Bowen is the priority transfer for West Ham if you want to get a West Ham player. Kudus is obviously a really fun differential pick. I'm not 100% sure he's going to be completely nailed because I know what Moyes is like, even though he has... I think Kudus is probably our best player in terms of... Maybe Paqueta might be. But one of those guys is probably... And Bowen, obviously, the services mentioned there as well. But Kudus is like up there amongst like the best West Ham players, but I know David Moyes is still... he prefers Souček and those types of guys at points. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure about Kudus, and I know for sure that Bowen is going to play every game,
Yeah.
whether it's Europa League, if it's the league, or if it's the cups. I think he's going to play most of the important games. So I really like Bowen, even though he doesn't have set pieces. Mostly, some set pieces he does have when Ward-Prowse doesn't play, and he doesn't have penalties either. But I think Bowen is just a really good pick, especially now against Burnley, and especially considering Bowen has scored in every away game so far. I think it's just a really good game week to bring in Bowen, and that's why I'm the most interested in him, because I think he is a good captain's option. Because looking at game week 13, if you just look at those fixtures strictly, what are the captain's options that stand out to you this game week, or this next game week? Because for me, it's not too many players to choose from. I guess like Spurs against Aston Villa at home. Aston Villa concede a couple goals away from home, but Spurs at the same time, like we mentioned just earlier, they're sort of in like a shift between having Madison and trying to figure out a new identity as well. I'm 100% sure about him. And then other than that, it's just like the players with good fixtures are like Fulham, Luton, Crystal Palace, I guess. Like the lesser teams. So who stands out to you as a captaincy pick, I guess, for Game Week 13, looking at this fixture ticker?
Good Lord. Solanke, maybe. Um, Awani at home against Brighton, because I just think he's a stellar. Like, he won't get you a hat trick, but he'll get you at least a goal. Just bank in that 12 points. I think obviously Bowen against Burnley, because I think Burnley are dog shit. Triple captain Calvert-Lewin against Man United, and you'll get a 3-0 hat trick. But Eze against Luton away. But generally speaking, this is the time where you can have some fun. But I think I'll still be going with Haaland
Yeah.
personally, just because he's just in such ridiculously good form. And because they're playing at the Etihad, I think they're gonna edge out the win, and life will be good.
Yeah, I think that's also a decent shot. And I think it's going to be the favorite option, but I'm not 100%
Yeah,
sure either. Some people might still go with Salah because he had a good game week.
yeah,
Holland
of
obviously had
course,
a
yeah,
good game week as well. I think it's going to be like a little split with them, probably more in favor of Holland because he has the home fixture. And
yeah,
then some people are going to go with Son, I still think. And then
sure,
other than that, I think you could just have fun with it. And it's going to be interesting to see who people choose. But I just want to use that opportunity to captain a West Ham player because I don't really get to have that chance that many times. I have captained Antonio a couple game weeks the last few seasons, and it's actually worked out pretty well for me. So yeah. For me, it's Bowen, but I think Holland is also a really good option. But like you said, I think it's mostly just going to be one goal potentially. Maybe he might hold because you've seen that in big games for Holland as well. But yeah, I think Bowen is just a more fun pick for me at least. Looking at this fixture ticker as well, the other thing that's noticeable is the fact that there are a lot of good and popular FPL teams sort of on the lower end of the spectrum. We have Liverpool, Chelsea, and City in the middle of it, but then at the bottom we have Spurs, Aston Villa, and Man United, and that means a lot of the bad teams are sort of higher up in the table. So, are there any players that stand out to you from the likes of? I'll mention a couple teams now, and you can't go outside of these teams. Okay, no Brentford because I know you you want to mention Mbeumo, but he's playing for a pretty good team. So, Burnley, Sheffield United, Bournemouth. Let's throw Wolves and Nottingham Forest in there as well. Any players that stand out to you for those teams?
Yeah, and I can say from each team, Bournemouth, Solanke. From Wolves, it's going to be Sarabia if he's now back to like I reckon he'll be nailed because you can't bench someone after they basically change everything. And from Nottingham Forest, their striker Oni because I think he's or Alanga. To be fair, I think both
Yeah,
look really like great options and differentials as well. So that would be my picks if we throw in a cheeky Crystal Palace there too. I definitely like the first three fixtures they got there: Luton away, West Ham away, and Bournemouth at home. I think Eze or Elise would be perfect options, especially Eze, who we know takes the penalties.
yeah. I think Palace, yeah, they have the three next fixtures are really good as well. So, can definitely mention them on top of that. Yeah, we've also talked a little bit about Spurs and Aston Villa. Are you in the same mindset you would keep most of their players, or would you sell them? Like, how do you feel about the Spurs and Aston Villa assets going forward, the fixtures that they have, and Newcastle as well? You can bunch them in there as well.
Newcastle, I want to get the fuck out of my team. Um, Spurs players, if I had Son, dude, you got to back Son against the wall, sort of thing. He's one of those sort of players where Sheffield United, I'm not going to do fuck all. Luton away, I'm not going to do fuck all. Hello, Liverpool. Hello, Arsenal. I'm going to score in both games, sort of
Yeah,
thing. So for me, he's great no matter the opposition. But if it's even more difficult opposition, apparently that's when he likes to show up and be like, remember me? Oh, yeah, I'm just as good as Kane. So I think with Son, especially, definitely consider it. But if you have like the Romeros, Adogis, shift them away. If you have Pedro Porro, that's where I'd say it's a bigger debate because I think Porro, out of all the defenders, has looked the best. I mean, he plays sort of like a right winger. It's very strange to see how offensive he is. And yeah, I mean, like that comes from his time at Sporting, and he was amazing. I'm pretty sure, just like Bruno, I was telling you about Pedro Porro as well, and how he was gonna be a good option for any Premier League team that gets him, and then fucking hell, of course, Spurs had to be the team that got him, and he's looked great. So I think Pedro Porro is definitely the one you'd keep out of all the defensive options, and then I would look into whether if there's better options for you elsewhere by selling Son, fine, but I would keep because I think yes, Aston Villa can be a tricky one at home, but it's still home. Then City away, anything can happen because City always concede, and if they're going to concede to anyone, it's Son. Then they have West Ham. Anything can happen there, but Son is likely going to score.
yeah,
Then they
usually
have
does.
Newcastle, who are sort of like an unknown commodity at this point. We don't know how they're going to be looking. If Isak is still injured by that game, 100% have Son.
I think Isak is
Uh,
actually going to be back after international break. I think that's the news. Alongside the news that Wilson is out for 6 weeks, most likely, Isak is
yeah,
also looking likely to be back. So
yeah, and then Nottingham Forest away, which anything can happen. So I think Son is going to be, like I said, a bit of a differential when some people will freak out and sell him, and especially if he somehow manages to blank against Aston Villa, 100% people are going to sell him against City away. So I'd say stick with Son. Aston Villa assets, I'm not convinced. I haven't been convinced of Wally Watkins so far. I've said I feel lucky not to have Cash, but again, he's been unlucky. He could have scored in 2 games in a row now. But they do have Spurs away, then they have Bournemouth away, and then their first home game back, City. Oh, the
Yeah.
second home game, Arsenal. Like it's not looking good, bro. So yeah, I would consider shifting them, but make smart decisions. If you're going to shift them, who are you going to shift them towards? I hope you're leaning towards if you have like a maybe like a Diaby, then you'd go instead for Bowen, or you do those sort of moves rather than chasing, I don't know, a Palmer, for example, just because he's done well.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's all right as well. I just wonder with Aston Villa, like, because I have Diaby and Cash myself. And my thinking is Spurs now. I think Spurs are sort of there for the taking a little bit because they are sort of in disarray.
sure.
And then Bournemouth, even though they have sort of turned it around lately, I still think Aston Villa are a better team and should still beat Bournemouth. So I think
Yep.
for the next 2 fixtures, I'm really unsure if I want to keep Diaby or not. And I think Cash is just someone that there are not like that many good defenders to get. I already have Tsimicast and Gabriel, who I feel like are like the best like explosive options, I guess. So I think I'm just gonna stick with my Aston Villa guys for the next 2 game weeks, most likely. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to think about for next week. That's when we're going to have our next podcast because, yeah, we're splitting it into 2 parts because it is the international break and we sort of have to divide the content. There's a lot of things that could happen between now and next time we talk on the FPL School podcast, at least, because we're going to stay in touch as friends, obviously. By the way, this has been part 1 of the Game Week 13 edition, I guess, of the FPL School podcast, the Game Week 12.5 edition, like I said it in the beginning. Thank you for joining me, Kevin, and as always, I'll leave you with the last word and what do you have to say for yourself before we end this podcast.
You know what? Fuck the decision makers who think that giving Everton a 12-point deduction is fair, but City and Chelsea just get to do whatever the fuck they want and have almost zero repercussions. I think it's completely unfair. I think we're still going to stay up regardless of the points deduction because we're looking that good. And if we do, fuck everyone else.
Fair enough. Thank you and goodbye.